Hey everyone, welcome back. We're doing a deep dive today into BRICS and its relationship to gold. It's a hot topic, especially with everything going on in the world right now. We're going to be breaking down this interview with Peter Grandich. He's a veteran Wall Street strategist and financial advisor, known for, well, telling it like it is.
He definitely doesn't sugarcoat anything, and he comes out swinging right away, talking about how fewer and fewer investors are interested in junior mining stocks these days. He even calls the old way of investing in mining dinosaur stuff.
So, is gold going out of style or something? What's causing that shift?
It's more about how the whole investing world's changed, I think. Peter points out this big move away from commission-based brokerage, where brokers would actually hunt down clients for these junior miners. Now, everything's fee-based asset management. It's a totally different game.
So these junior mining companies are having a hard time even getting in front of individual investors then?
Pretty much, yeah. And not just that, they're struggling to get the capital they need to grow in this new environment. Plus, there's this whole other shiny thing competing for that speculative investment money now. Cryptocurrencies.
Ah, yeah, crypto. Always got to shake things up, right? I remember Peter even made a comparison to the tulip mania. Maybe things are a little too hyped up in the crypto world right now. But, okay, central banks are buying gold, right? So why aren't we hearing more about its potential, especially with all this talk about BRICS? It's almost like there's a media blackout.
That's what Peter finds so strange. His argument is that the media, well, they get a lot of their advertising money from financial institutions that are heavily invested in, you guessed it, crypto. So talking up gold, which could be a rival, doesn't exactly help their bottom line, right? He actually jokes that gold is like Rodney Dangerfield. It gets no respect.
Makes you wonder what they don't want us to know, especially with the potential BRICS currency backed by gold, possibly in the works.
That's a really important point. Peter has this interesting piece of advice for his clients. Buy gold and hope it doesn't go up. What he means is, gold's more of a hedge, a safe haven if things get really bad. It's not about getting rich quick, but about protecting what you have.
Like insurance for your wealth, basically. That makes a lot of sense. But since we're talking about potential shakeups, Peter makes this pretty bold prediction about BRICS. He thinks it could be as impactful as the Industrial Revolution in just the next 3 to 5 years. That's huge. What makes him so bullish on it?
Well, a couple of things. First, the sheer number of countries wanting to join BRICS is growing like crazy. That's a big sign that the balance of power in the world might be shifting, right? Second, and this is a big one, there's the possibility of a gold-backed BRICS currency that could seriously challenge the US dollar's position as the world's leading currency, and that would upend the whole financial system as we know it. He even brought up a potential agreement between France and the US. They'd seize frozen Russian assets and give the interest to Ukraine.
Whoa, that's a bold move.
Yeah, and Peter thinks this kind of thing could actually push more countries towards BRICS. Imagine you're another country watching this play out. You start to think, hey, if they can do that to Russia, what's stopping them from doing it to us?
Right, especially with some U.S. politicians hinting that the U.S. might be interested in Ukraine for its resources.
Which brings us to another one of Peter's big concerns, this global competition for critical minerals. He sees a future where these resources become more and more valuable. And China, which has been quietly securing them for years, becomes a dominant force.
So we've got these potential power shifts with BRICS, a possible scramble for resources, and this underlying worry about what happens to the U.S. dollar. That's a lot to think about.
It is, and Peter doesn't stop there. He's also really concerned about the erosion of freedom and the rule of law, particularly in the U.S.
He talked about how a small but really vocal minority seems to be pushing its values on everyone else, leaving a lot of people feeling like they're not being heard or that things are just slipping away.
Exactly. He thinks this shift away from traditional Judeo-Christian values is causing a decline in morals and this rise of anything-goes thinking, and that's creating a lot of unease and uncertainty.
He mentioned that it's even affecting investor confidence.
Yeah.
More and more people, especially those with a lot of wealth, are looking to move their assets out of the U.S., almost like you're losing faith.
That's exactly how Peter sees it. They're looking for stability, a system that aligns with their values, and they're just not finding that in the U.S. right now.
So with everything looking so shaky, what does Peter suggest we do? He keeps talking about building a financial ark to weather these potential storms. What does that actually look like?
He lays out 5 main reasons why you need to start thinking about creating that financial safety net. Debt and deficits, the retirement and aging crisis, the strain of immigration, the rise of BRICS, and political paralysis.
Okay, let's break those down. Starting with debt and deficits. Peter doesn't hold back. He says the U.S. debt could hit a mind-blowing $54 trillion within 10 years. What does that even mean for everyday people like us?
It's kind of like we're on this huge ship heading straight for an iceberg, and that iceberg is U.S. debt. Just the interest payments on that amount would be astronomical. It could cripple the economy or force the government to take some pretty drastic measures, like maybe raising taxes a lot or even selling off national assets.
And then there's the retirement and aging crisis.
Yep.
You mentioned that something like 65% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. That's a huge chunk of the population barely scraping by.
Oh, absolutely. And as the baby boomers keep getting older, the pressure on things like Social Security is only going to get worse. It's just math, you know?
So what can the government even do at this point? Are we all destined to work till we drop?
Well, they're going to have to make some tough choices that probably won't be very popular. Raising the retirement age so we all have to work longer before we can collect benefits, that's probably going to happen. They might also means test benefits, so only people with really limited income get the full amount.
And what if those measures aren't enough?
Then they might be forced to just print more money to cover the shortfall. That's where this modern monetary theory, or MMT, stuff comes in.
But wait, the mainstream media keeps saying everything's fine, don't worry, be happy. It feels like there's this huge gap between what they're telling us and what's actually happening.
That's exactly what Peter finds so troubling. He sees this massive disconnect between how optimistic Wall Street is and the struggles of everyday people who are relying on food banks just to put food on the table.
That's a pretty bleak picture, especially when you consider that arc analogy. If there's a financial storm coming, we need to be ready.
Right, absolutely. And Peter's third reason for building that arc, the strain of immigration.
He's careful to say that this isn't about being for or against immigration, but about understanding the economic realities.
Right. Regardless of your views on immigration policy, when a lot of people come in, especially if they don't have a lot of resources, it puts a strain on government budgets at all levels, federal, state, and local.
So we've got debt, retirement worries, and immigration strain all feeding into this arc concept. What's the fourth piece?
The rise of BRICS. We've talked about it a bit, but Peter thinks that BRICS gaining more power could really hurt the U.S.'s standing in the world. That could lead to capital flight, basically investors taking their money and running, and more economic instability.
And the final piece of the puzzle.
Political paralysis. The parties are so divided, it's becoming almost impossible to address these big, complicated problems. It's all gridlock, and that's a major roadblock to finding real solutions.
So we've got this perfect storm brewing. Debt, retirement worries, immigration strain, BRICS rising, and political gridlock. It's starting to sound like a financial horror movie.
It can feel that way when you lay it all out like that, but remember, knowing what the risks are is the first step to protecting yourself. Knowledge is power, especially when it comes to your money.
Okay, let's focus in on one specific concern that I think a lot of people are worried about. Social Security. Peter doesn't shy away from the hard truths about that, does he?
Not at all. He's pretty clear that Social Security, at least the way it's set up now, can't last forever. The numbers just don't add up in the long run.
So what does that mean for those of us who are counting on Social Security for retirement?
Well, like we talked about earlier, the government's probably going to have to make some tough choices. Raising the retirement age so you have to work longer before you can get those benefits, that's probably inevitable. They might also means test benefits, so only people with really limited income would get the full amount.
And if those changes aren't enough?
Then they might have to turn to printing more money, which could lead to inflation. That's where that modern monetary theory, or MMT, stuff comes in. But the potential consequences of MMT are a whole other discussion.
It's a lot to take in, especially when you compare it to what the mainstream media is saying, that everything's fine and we should just relax. It feels like they're trying to lull us into a false sense of security.
Peter's definitely skeptical of that message. He sees this huge gap between Wall Street's rosy outlook and what everyday Americans are dealing with.
It all goes back to that idea of building an arc. If we want to be ready for this potential financial storm, we need to prepare, right?
Absolutely. And before we go any further, Peter brings up something really interesting at the end of this part of the interview. It's about that motto on U.S. currency, "In God We Trust."
Oh, wow. Yeah.
He asks the simple but really deep question: does that motto still mean anything in today's world? It's a question that goes beyond just economics and finance. It touches on our core values and beliefs.
It really makes you think.
Peter personally believes in the motto, but he admits that for a lot of people, it doesn't hold the same weight anymore, especially in a society that seems to be moving further and further away from its Judeo-Christian roots. And he leaves us with this powerful analogy that really gets you thinking about the pursuit of happiness and security. He says, The guy that owns the bus company is always happier than the guy driving the bus.
That's a powerful image. Are you the one in control, charting your own course? Or are you following someone else's rules? It makes you think about what true freedom really looks like, both financially and personally. We'll delve deeper into Peter's ideas about navigating these choppy waters and building that financial arc right after this.
Yeah, that analogy really sticks with you, doesn't it? Makes you think about who's really calling the shots in your life and what freedom really means.
It does for sure. But let's get back to that idea of building a financial arc. I mean, it's easy to get overwhelmed by all this talk about potential disasters. What are some actual steps people can take to protect themselves?
Peter says the first thing is to take a good, hard look at your finances. Where are you most vulnerable? Do you have a ton of debt? Are you saving enough for retirement?
Like checking the supplies before you set sail, right? Got to know what you've got to work with.
Exactly. And once you've got a clear picture, you can start making a plan to fix any weak spots. Maybe that's paying down debt as fast as you can, saving more, or looking into different investment options.
Speaking of investments, Peter's a big believer in gold as a hedge against inflation and economic uncertainty. But is that something everyone should be thinking about?
Gold's not a magic solution or anything, and it's not right for everyone. But Peter thinks it's something to seriously consider, especially in today's economy, as part of a diversified portfolio.
What about people who are already retired or close to it? They might not have a lot of time to make big changes. Is it too late for them to build an arc?
It's never too late to take control of your finances. Even small changes can make a big difference. Downsizing your home, cutting back on unnecessary spending, maybe even getting a part-time job to bring in some extra cash, those are all things to consider.
So it's about being proactive and taking those first steps, no matter what stage of life you're in.
Exactly. And Peter really emphasizes how important it is to stay informed. Things are changing so fast these days, and the decisions we make now have a huge impact on our future.
That's really what these deep dives are all about, helping you make sense of all the complicated stuff happening in the world so you can make smart decisions.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So read, listen to podcasts, follow trustworthy news sources, arm yourself with knowledge. The more you understand, the better prepared you'll be for any financial bumps in the road.
And don't be afraid to get advice from professionals you trust.
That's key. A financial advisor, a tax attorney, an estate planner, those are the experts who can help you create a plan that works for you and your goals. They can help you build an arc that fits your specific situation.
So to recap, building your financial arc involves taking stock of your current situation, making a plan to address any weaknesses, thinking about diversification, staying up to date on global trends, and getting expert advice when you need it. What else should we keep in mind?
The most important thing is to actually do something. Don't wait till it's too late. The sooner you start building that arc, the better prepared you'll be no matter what happens in the future.
We've covered a lot of ground here. Debt, retirement, BRICS, Social Security, even the erosion of traditional values. It's a lot to process, but Peter's insights, while they might be a bit scary, are also empowering, right? He's not just pointing out the problems, he's offering a way to deal with them.
That's what makes his perspective so valuable, I think. He's not trying to freak people out. He's trying to give them the knowledge and tools they need to take control of their financial future.
And he reminds us that this isn't just about money, it's about freedom. Remember that analogy about the bus company owner and the bus driver?
Oh, yeah.
It's about having the power to live life on your own terms, to make choices that align with your values and priorities. And that brings us back to the arc analogy. It's not just about protecting your assets. It's about creating a life of freedom and security, a life where you're the captain of your own ship.
Exactly. It's about having the peace of mind to pursue your passions, spend time with loved ones, and make a difference in the world knowing you're financially secure enough to handle whatever comes your way.
Peter's ideas really challenge us to think differently about money and security. It's not about hoarding wealth or living in fear. It's about building a solid foundation that allows you to live with purpose and intention.
I think that's a powerful message, especially in times like these. It's a reminder that we have the power to shape our own destinies.
Speaking of shaping our destinies, let's go back to that thought-provoking question Peter asked about the motto, "In God We Trust," on U.S. currency. Does that still mean anything in today's world, which seems to be getting more and more secular?
It's a complicated question that sparks a lot of debate. I mean, on one hand, the separation of church and state is a fundamental principle of American democracy.
So some people would argue that having a religious motto on our money goes against that.
Right. But on the other hand, "In God We Trust" has been part of our national identity for over 100 years. For a lot of Americans, it represents a belief in something bigger than themselves and a sense of shared values that goes beyond political and ideological differences.
It's a reminder that we're all connected, part of something greater.
Exactly. So the question is, how do we balance the principles of religious freedom with the historical and cultural significance of this motto? It's a conversation we need to have as a society.
Especially with the world constantly changing. And speaking of change, Peter seems particularly worried about the decline of freedom and traditional values, especially in the U.S.
He sees this trend toward relativism, where there's no absolute truth, and a decline in moral fiber. And he thinks this is contributing to a lot of the problems we're facing as a nation.
He talked about how a small but very vocal minority seems to be dictating what's acceptable for everyone else. And it's leaving a lot of people in the majority feeling ignored and frustrated.
Yes, and he believes this is creating a lot of division and polarization, which makes it even harder to solve the complex problems we have.
He also mentioned that this shift is having a real impact on the economy. He's seeing more and more investors and business owners deciding to take their money and businesses out of the U.S., almost like a vote of no confidence.
It's a sign that people are looking for stability and security, and they just don't see it here right now. They want a system that aligns with their values and offers some sense of predictability.
So what does this mean for the future of the United States? Are we heading for a major decline?
It's hard to say for sure what's going to happen, but it's clear that we're at a turning point. We need to decide what kind of society we want to be, what values are important to us. It's a choice that will have a huge impact on future generations.
It's a conversation we need to be having, and we need to have it now. But even with all this uncertainty and change, one thing's for sure. Peter's analogy of building a financial ark is a powerful way to think about navigating these turbulent times.
It's about more than just preparing financially. It's about building resilience, both in your finances and in your mindset. It's about having a strong foundation of values and principles to guide you through tough times.
We need to build arks, not just for our wallets, but for our souls too.
That's a great way to put it. It's about developing inner strength and a sense of purpose that can help you get through anything.
So let's recap the key takeaways from this part of our deep dive.
First, we need to be aware of the potential risks and challenges, both here at home and globally. The world's changing fast, and we need to stay informed.
Second, we need to be proactive about protecting our financial well-being. That can mean paying down debt, saving more, diversifying investments, or even changing our lifestyle to cut expenses.
Third, we need to stay involved in the conversations that are shaping our world. Don't be afraid to speak up, share your views, and stand up for the future you want.
And lastly, we need to build arcs, not just for our finances, but for our souls. Strengthen your values, deepen your relationships, find meaning and purpose in your life. Those are the things that will truly sustain you, no matter what challenges you face.
It's a lot to take on, but it's essential for navigating these uncertain times. Building an arc is a journey, not a destination.
We're all in this together, and by sharing knowledge, supporting each other, and taking action, we can get through these challenges and come out stronger on the other side. We'll be back after a short break to wrap up this deep dive and explore what the rise of BRICS could mean for the future of the U.S. dollar and the global financial system. Stick with us. So we've talked about a lot in this deep dive, from the decline of gold mining investments to the potential rise of BRICS. But there's one question that keeps coming back to me.
I think I know the one Peter kind of left hanging about what a shift towards BRICS and a gold-backed currency would mean for the U.S. dollar and the whole global financial system, right?
You got it. It's a big question and, honestly, a little bit scary.
No doubt about it. It really gets you thinking, and there aren't any easy answers, which I think is kind of Peter's point. He's not saying the world's going to end, but he wants us to really look at what's happening. If a big chunk of the world, especially these fast-growing economies, are looking for a different system, what does that say about the one we have now?
I guess it means maybe the U.S. dollar's dominance isn't as guaranteed as we've always thought.
Exactly. And if a gold-backed currency starts to catch on, it challenges this whole idea of fiat currency, where the value is basically based on trusting governments. What happens when that trust starts to disappear?
It's like the whole thing could collapse at any moment. That's a pretty unsettling thought. But isn't gold a limited resource? Could it actually support a global financial system?
That's a question that comes up a lot, and there's definitely a lot of debate about how practical a gold standard would be on a global scale. But for a lot of people who like gold, it's not just about the practical side. It's about gold being seen as stable, something with real value that they don't think fiat currencies have.
So it's not just about the economics, it's a whole different way of looking at money and value.
Exactly. And that's what makes this whole BRICS thing so interesting. It could be a total game changer, a real challenge to the way things are. Whether or not a BRICS currency backed by gold actually happens, just the fact that they're talking about it shows how much the world is changing.
It feels like we're at a fork in the road. One path keeps things the same with the US dollar staying on top. The other leads to a world with lots of different power centers and maybe even new currencies fighting for control.
And the question for all of us is, how do we get ready for these changes? How do we protect ourselves financially no matter what happens?
Goes back to those tips we talked about. Figure out where you're vulnerable, make a plan, diversify your investments, keep up with what's going on in the world, and get advice from experts when you need it. But I think it's more than just the practical stuff, right? We need to change our thinking too.
Absolutely. It's about being flexible, being open to change, not being stuck in the old ways of doing things.
Because the world is changing whether we want it to or not. And the people who can adapt, who are willing to learn and grow, those are the people who are going to do well in this new world.
I think that's a great point to end on. This deep dive wasn't about giving you all the answers or telling you what the future holds. It was about giving you the knowledge and the tools to ask the right questions and make smart choices no matter what happens.
So as we wrap up, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep asking those tough questions. The journey to financial security and freedom never really ends, and we're all in this together. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.